friend of the show, David Pakman, appeared on the Will Cain Fox News podcast. Will Cain is a Fox News host and host on the YouTube channel, and I guess across podcast platforms, this show. And there was a debate that took place, and David Pakman, I have some moments that I want to show you of him nicely demolishing, one might say, some of these Fox News ideas. So we'll get to first the discussion that they had about the cognitive situation, for lack of a better phrase, between President Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and something that I've spoken quite a bit about, as well as David Pakman, is while, of course, Biden's aged over the last few years, what it seems and what a lot of medical professionals now are speaking out and saying is that the mental cognitive situation we're seeing with Trump is concerning in what it does to his decision making based on particular elements of what you observe with Trump's glitches and his way of speaking. Whereas Biden, aging for sure, not giving as sharp speeches as he maybe did 10, 20 years ago, but not something that concerns many of these medical professionals in Biden's ability to critically think and make decisions as president. So with that being said, here is David Pakman on the Will Cain podcast.
I'm not a mental health professional. I think your background is in law, so I think you aren't either. At this point, I've interviewed 4 different mental health professionals. They all agree Biden is slowing down. And when you understand the things that are tough for Biden, combined with his lifelong stutter, he very quickly corrects himself when he gets a fact wrong. He shows certain signs that they say are appropriate for an 80-plus-year-old guy. The scary thing about Trump, to the professionals, not to me, this is just what they say. When Trump confused Nikki Haley with Nancy Pelosi, he didn't realize I'm literally saying things that make no sense. He repeated it, in fact, and continued on. When he regularly says Hungary has a border with Russia, or Orban runs Turkey, or Obama's president, or I defeated Obama, or when he doesn't realize it. And that combined with what are called phonemic paraphasias, where he glitches and can't get a word out, and then white flags, like the infamous Saudi Arabia, and then he moves on to something else. That's concerning the mental health professionals I talk to, and I have to go by the professionals because I'm not one.
Because the professionals have a sterling track record over the last 5 years. No intellectual capture or groupthink within the professional class. But
well,
David, here's what I think's going on.
About the particular individuals, it's very easy to generically say, "Oh, the professionals." Demonstrate it about the specific people making the claims and bring something alternative forward. I'll give you one other example if I can.
Well, I don't know the specific. I mean, to be fair, you haven't cited anyone. You have cited also a generic
Dr. John Gartner,
professionals
Dr.
I've
Harry
talked
Siegel.
to. So
I mean, I can provide.
I can't
the list.
rebut them. Yeah, but I haven't seen what they had to say or don't know who they are, so I can't sit here and rebut their testimony to you on the David Pakman show. What I can say is I think this is, and I'm saying this, and this isn't, I don't want one of these slap fight stupid debates, and I don't think any of us are going to do that.
No.
But here's what I think's going on, David, and I'm going to be real with you, and you just tell me,
Please.
No, Will, I think you're wrong. That's not what I'm doing. I think you're creating a false equivalency. So I think what you're doing, and I'm not going to argue for Trump's perfection.
Yeah, so the first thing is what he mentioned, which is it's just so irritating that for all the coverage that is given by networks like Fox News to any little glitch or gaffe of Biden, they refuse to discuss the constant, and I'll play that compilation again in a second. I like it too much. The constant glitches and struggles that Trump is experiencing, and the fact that one of the people David Pakman brought up was John Gartner, that he wrote a piece, I think it was in Salon, saying that Biden's brain is aging while Trump's brain is dementing, his word, not mine. And that, I think, is the contrast that we could be having a discussion about. But aesthetically, I'll admit, I guess because when Trump's having a glitch, he's doing it while shouting and being very aggressive, and that doesn't come off as sort of an aging old man as some of the moments we see from President Biden. But shouldn't we just care about how it impacts governance and critical thinking skills? And the testimony from many medical professional psychologists is we're not concerned with what we're seeing from Biden, just sort of normal stuff, and won't impact his ability to be president. Whereas Trump, it's taking an already unhinged person and now making him even worse at critically thinking, which is a frightening scenario. I do think one of the reasons this plays into a lot of the Republican ideas too is because they are sort of obsessed with aesthetic. A lot of the appeal of Trump is that strong man sort of going after the liberals, being able to own them, whatever. And it's not as much about listing off in a calm manner the policy achievements that make Trump someone who should be in the White House again, right? We talk about this so much. Whereas Biden, the first thing I bring up when I advocate for him being reelected to people is his policy record. And I won't go through it again because I've done it so many times with you all. Some of you are sick of hearing it, but that's what matters the most. Millions of people across the country are being impacted by these infrastructure projects or by prescription drug costs being lowered. Those things matter in a way that some speech not compelling you, inspiring you, doesn't. And that also should be noted. And on top of all of that, Biden shows up when he needs to show up, as we've talked about before. When he knows millions of Americans are going to be watching a speech, the State of the Union or a debate, he shows up. And that's why every time we have to hear these Fox News storylines about how Biden was jacked up during some event, when in reality, it's just him understanding, okay, this is an important moment. I'm going to prepare. I'm going to be well rested, whatever. I'm going to come with the energy necessary to deliver this speech. Before getting to this next moment from this podcast and the conversation, please make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. So important. And you can get the daily bonus show by clicking the join button, getting that members only content. And I want to show you again this Trump glitch compilation from some recent events over the last few months.
With Obama, we won an election that everyone said couldn't be won.
Obama dropped missiles and they ended up hitting a kindergarten. If that's the case, he's going to end up being indicted when he leaves office.
Obama he doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't even mention them in his statements. It's all coming through Iran.
Well, you mean President Biden?
They were interviewing him 2 weeks ago, and they said, what would you advise President Obama? The whole world seems to be exploding. They never report the crowd on January 6th. You know, Nikki Haley is in charge of security. We offered her 10,000 people, soldiers, National Guard, so whatever they want. They turned it down.
We would be in World War II very quickly if we're going to be relying on this man.
When I came here, everyone thought Bush was going to win. They thought Bush because Bush supposedly was a military person. Great. You know what? He was a military. He got us into the Middle East. We came up with a new couple of words for corn. Viktor Orban, Hungary, very powerful. He fronts on both Russia and Ukraine. They were funding Hezbollah and Hamas. We're also going to place strong protections to stop banks and regulators from trying to debank you from your political beliefs, what they do. They want to debank you, and we're going to debank. Think of this. Is it crazy, really? Just this week it was reported that an illegal alien, and you just look at this, what's happening. He must be cognitively impaired. I'm not cognitively. And you know what? When I am, you're going to know it. You're going to be the first people. I know my people. Viktor Orban. Did anyone ever hear of him? He's probably like one of the strongest leaders anywhere in the world. And he's the leader of, right? He's the leader of Turkey. Fronts on both Russia. The Biden border will. Well, you know this, right? Even Argentina. They went MAGA. You know Argentina, great guy. We will expel the warmongers. We are a nation that just recently heard that Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat.
So maybe Trump should start with the orange man in the mirror before talking so much about Biden's issues. With that being said, here's the next part of this podcast.
That's why I bring you up as compared to others on the left, has actually bridged some gaps that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you would have vilified somebody on the right for. For example, first of all, much more dovish on foreign war. Much, I don't think an isolationist, but much more through the prism of whatever it is militarily, how does it serve America first? Where the George W. Bush, Mitt Romney Republican, who by that time, by the way, at that time on the left was described as a devil for all of these wars, that now seems to be a part of the left's neocon shift. whether or not it's Ukraine or whatever it may be. The left is now much more the party who is looking for big foreign wars, and Donald Trump, not the entire right, not the entire Republican Party, but Donald Trump is the one pushing it in a less neocon vision. Same thing on the economy. 10, 15 years ago, it was the left who was concerned about domestic production, and let's talk about tariffs on various places like China, when the right was more libertarian capitalism, free trade. And I think a concern for the middle class and the American working class is a good repositioning because of Donald Trump. By the way, we've seen the movement, for example, of union voters towards Donald Trump, previous Democrats towards Donald Trump because of that kind of position. And I think that what I worry about your side, I don't know if it's a repositioning or if it's a truth. You're too wedded to institutional power. There was a time when the left was skeptical and rebellious of institutional power, and now you're indistinguishable from institutional power. Whether or not it's the experts you quoted, or that's a side note, but like the medical establishment all the way to the top, government authority, including the military-industrial complex, the left's embrace of institutional power as a sign of their devotion to democracy is incredibly concerning.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I don't know that we can do all of that in the depth that it probably deserves in the time we have left, but I would say a couple things. I think your analysis of Trump's shifts are accurate if you replace what's best for the country with what's best for Trump. I agree with the analysis. I would just replace that. The prism through which Trump analyzes everything is what is best for him. I mean, I think the abortion thing is a great example where at the end of the day, he got his 3 justices, Roe v. Wade's overturned, disaster politically in the sense that there's more of the population now thinking abortion should be legal in most cases than ever in American history. And Trump realizes this may not be good for me. So what does he do? He just basically says, hey, listen, kind of whatever. Like, if you don't like it and you want to ban it in your state, cool. Some states are going to say it's fine. And hey, that's it. As long as you vote for me, essentially do whatever you want.
Yeah, so interestingly, I don't think I've ever covered it, but I've watched before Will Cain's podcast and heard him make this case that you heard before David jumped in. And it's this idea that, hey, you can have your issues with Trump, but at least he's bringing the GOP to a place that is not wanting to get into needless foreign wars and is about the working class. And that's something you'll hear from a lot of people. Now, the fact that the argument goes something like, you might think Trump's sort of offensive, but hey, he's pro-working class, is so wrong in so many ways. The first being what I always have to bring up, which is it doesn't matter anything about him if he threatens democracy, which he does, and we've made that case before. But also, again, we go back to an aesthetic thing. It's an aesthetic. It's a rhetorical thing. He's not actually for the working class. And because of the existential threat that he poses to our democracy, sometimes I forget to remind people of that fact, that his record is not one of someone who brought his party back to caring about the working class and not just serving those who are already so powerful. Before getting to that, though, the first point he made was foreign wars. Just a reminder, trying to make the left, Democrats, the party that wants to intervene and be involved in foreign wars. Trump promised to get out of Afghanistan. He actually didn't get that done by the end of his first term. Biden accomplished it, and it was Fox News who went after Biden for doing that. So that would be a really good example of ending a foreign war that we shouldn't be involved in. But what he's alluding to is aid to Ukraine, for example. No, it's not involving us, trying to get us into a foreign war by us giving aid to an ally that's currently being invaded by our adversary. That's just common sense, what we should be doing for all the reasons I've gone through the past. But then back to this pro-working class thing. Yeah, Trump does rhetorically speak like a populist, pro-working class type of guy more than many of these past Republicans who were more openly pro, big business and stuff to that effect. But when he actually had power, what was his one big legislative achievement? Cutting taxes disproportionately for those at the top of the economic ladder, pushing even more wealth in the direction of the wealthy. And it's funny that he brought up unions, as if unions logically should start supporting Trump more when Biden has been one of the most pro-union presidents in the history of this country. And that contrast is so stark between him and his predecessor, Donald Trump. And then, yeah, Trump would do some things here and there that nominally were for domestic production, like the tariffs that he lies about and pretends like China was was paying when they weren't. But the record at large was him, like I said, cutting tax for those who already have so much and cutting regulations for big business that serve them but make your average consumer less well off and less protected, and all these different things, especially when he was overseeing the pandemic recovery. Even his recovery was serving far too much those who already have so much instead of looking out for working class Americans, whereas Biden's recovery was much more equitable, which isn't talked about enough. I'll leave it there. Let me know what you thought of all that in the comments.